You're in love. You're planning the wedding. You've talked about where you're going to live. Maybe you've even talked about children. But I have a question. Have you talked about what being a partner actually means? Because two people can stand at the altar, say I do, and walk away with completely different ideas about what they just agreed to. One person thinks, we're married now. We're a team. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. The other person thinks, I married you. I didn't give up my independence. Neither one may realize there's a problem until money gets involved. Welcome back to Clean Slate Financial Freedom. I'm Simon. All week, Jamila and Romeo have been debating one big question. What does partnership really mean in a marriage? And today, we're bringing those arguments together. As you listen, I want you to decide, are you Team Jamila? Are you Team Romeo? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Let's get into it. Part 1. Does marriage mean becoming one team? Jamila believes that when two people get married, decisions that affect their future should become joint decisions. Romeo agrees they're a team, but he says marriage doesn't erase individuality. And this is where things get interesting. Suppose your husband gets offered a great job. It's more money, better benefits, a big opportunity. There's only one problem. The job is 500 miles away. Should he accept it and then come home and tell his wife? I think most of us would say no. Why? Because his career may belong to him, but moving 500 miles affects both of them. Now let's make it harder. Suppose he wants to buy himself a $300 watch with his own money. Does that require a family meeting? Probably not. So somewhere between that $300 watch and moving the family 500 miles away, there's a line. The problem is that couples don't always agree on where that line is. Jamila's argument is, if it affects us, we discuss it. Romeo's argument is, if it doesn't affect us, trust me to make my own decision. Neither argument sounds unreasonable. The problem comes when one spouse thinks something affects the marriage, and the other one doesn't. So before you get married, maybe the question isn't simply, do you believe marriage is a partnership? Maybe you need to ask, what decisions do you believe partners should make together? That's a very different conversation. Part 2. We both work. What happens to our money? Now we get to one of my favorite disagreements between Jamila and Romeo. Both spouses work. Both get a paycheck. So what happens to that money? Jamila has a system. She wants 4 accounts. Account number 1, household expenses, mortgage or rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, and the regular household bills. Account number 2, savings and investments, emergency savings, retirement, investing, and the couple's future financial goals. Then there are 2 personal accounts, Jamila's account and Romeo's account. Jamila's philosophy is pretty simple. Take care of our life first, build our future second. Then we both have personal money. Romeo says, not so fast. He doesn't believe marriage requires putting both paychecks into one big pot. His position is that the couple should agree on what the household needs. Agree on how much they're going to save. Agree on how much they're going to invest. Then each person contributes the amount they've agreed to contribute. After that, Romeo believes what's left of his paycheck stays his, and what's left of Jamila's stays hers. Now I want you to think about something. Both systems could accomplish the same goal. Bills paid, emergency fund established, investments growing, retirement being funded, both spouses having personal money. So what's the real disagreement? Ownership. Jamila starts with, it's our money, and then we divide some of it for ourselves. Romeo starts with, it's my money, but I have financial obligations to our marriage. That sounds like a small difference. It's not. Because those 2 philosophies can create completely different expectations in a marriage. So here's my question for you. When 2 working people get married, do the paychecks become our money? Or does each spouse keep ownership of their income while contributing to the marriage? Tell me in the comments. Team Jamila or Team Romeo? Part 3. Financial privacy versus financial secrecy. Now here's where this gets even more complicated. Does your spouse have the right to know everything you buy? Jamila says no, and that might surprise some of you. Remember, Jamila wants combined finances, but she also wants each spouse to have a personal account. So if the household bills are paid, the emergency fund is funded, the couple is investing, and Jamila takes $150 from her personal account and buys something she wants. She doesn't believe she owes Romeo an explanation. Romeo agrees with the personal freedom part, but because he prefers more separation between their finances, he takes it further. His argument is, once I've fulfilled the financial commitments I made to this household, I shouldn't have to explain every remaining dollar. And that brings us to a very important distinction. Privacy and secrecy are not necessarily the same thing. Having $200 of personal spending money and buying something without discussing it may be privacy, but secretly opening a credit card, running up $15,000 in debt, and hiding it from your spouse, that's not privacy. That's financial secrecy, and potentially financial infidelity. The difficult part is deciding where one ends and the other begins. So ask yourself, how much financial privacy should married people have? Part 4. Are we building one future? Let's talk about goals. Jamila says married couples need a shared financial destination. Romeo says they need shared goals and individual goals. Here's an example. Imagine Jamila is putting money into retirement every month. She's investing. She's preparing for the future. Romeo isn't. 25 years pass. Jamila is financially prepared to retire. Romeo isn't. Can Jamila really say, "Well, I prepared. You didn't. Good luck"? Technically, maybe. Realistically, they're married. Romeo's financial situation is probably going to affect Jamila. That's Jamila's point. But Romeo has another argument. Suppose Romeo wants to start a business. Jamila doesn't. Should Romeo have to abandon that goal because it isn't one of their goals? Or suppose Jamila wants to invest in something Romeo isn't interested in. Does she need to give up her ambition because her husband doesn't share it? Romeo says no, and I think this gives us another important distinction. Shared goals don't have to eliminate individual dreams. The question is, which comes first? And that's something couples need to decide before the disagreement happens. Part 5. When your spouse falls, do you have to carry them? Now we come to what I think is the hardest question of the week. Suppose your spouse loses their job. Not because they're lazy. The company downsized. They've worked for years. They've done everything right. Now they're unemployed. Would you carry the household financially while they got back on their feet? Jamila says, absolutely. Romeo says, absolutely. Interesting. They agree. Now let's change the situation. Your spouse repeatedly overspends. They run up credit cards. You help pay them off. They promise it won't happen again. 6 months later, more debt. You rescue them again. A year later, they're back in the same situation. Now what? Jamila believes partnership means helping your spouse through a difficult season. Romeo agrees. But Romeo draws a very strong distinction between supporting someone who's struggling and protecting someone from the consequences of repeated irresponsible behavior. And this may be one of the most important financial conversations married couples can have. Because sometimes your spouse needs help. Sometimes they need accountability. And sometimes constantly rescuing someone isn't helping them at all. So here's the question. At what point does supporting your spouse become enabling your spouse? I really want to hear your answers to that one. Simon's bigger question. After listening to Jamila and Romeo all week, I've noticed something. They don't actually disagree about everything. Both believe bills should be paid. Both believe couples should save. Both believe couples should invest. Both believe spouses should support each other. Both believe each person deserves some independence. So what's the disagreement? It's how they define partnership. Jamila tends to start with, "We're married, so how do we handle this?" Romeo tends to start with, "I'm responsible for doing my part, but I'm still an individual." And neither philosophy automatically guarantees a successful marriage. Because you could combine every dollar and still lie to each other. You could have separate accounts and communicate beautifully. You could call yourselves a 50-50 partnership and constantly fight over who's doing more. Or you could have completely different responsibilities and function as an incredible team. Maybe the most important thing isn't choosing Jamila's system or Romeo's system. Maybe it's making sure you and the person you're marrying understand what partnership means to each other before you say, "I do." Final question. Plus CTA. So I'm giving this one to you. Imagine you're getting married tomorrow. You both work. You both earn your own money. How would your marriage operate? Would you combine your paychecks? Keep separate accounts? Have joint accounts plus personal accounts? How much financial privacy would each person have? And if one person got into financial trouble, when does your problem become our problem? Put your answer in the comments. And don't just tell me Team Jamila or Team Romeo. Tell me why. Because somebody reading your comment may see marriage and money completely differently after hearing your perspective. If you enjoy real conversations about money, marriage, relationships, financial responsibility, and building wealth together, subscribe to Clean Slate Financial Freedom. I'm Simon, and remember, a strong financial partnership doesn't begin with a bank account. It begins with a conversation. I'll see you next time.